on
This call is being
getting them to
recorded.
use and implement the system. And as far as updates, all the agencies are transitioned to working from home, and we are really still pushing them to be logging on and looking at matches. And some have really started to increase their use of Family Match, so that's good. A couple hints, if you there's been a lot of questions about if families are still interested in pursuing adoption during this time, so please stay in touch with your agency and worker and let them know. Also, we have sent a survey this morning that we'd appreciate you completing. There is two parts of the survey. One is, are you still interested in pursuing adoption, or has the pandemic changed your plans? And then secondly, would you be interested or willing to act as an emergency placement for foster children during this crisis time? The foster care system, when foster parents are getting sick, then they have to have the children moved, and it's kind of a cascade effect that is impacting everybody. So we have been asked by agencies to find out if families are interested in serving in that capacity while you're still waiting to be matched with a child. And that's all I have.
Great, Amy, thanks. Guys, this is Whitney from Virginia. I'll give a quick update to everybody on the state of affairs in Virginia. Similarly, we're checking in with families. We are hearing from some workers about COVID-19 exposed youth who are in need of placement. It may be just for a brief window of time while someone is recovering, or it may be a more long-term foster situation. I have been trying to connect and just make sure our workers know if we've got families that they can reach out to those families, agencies, etc. But I've also sent out a note to a bunch of our families, just something that we're going to start down here or up here, wherever you are, in Virginia is, we're going to be hosting some virtual coffee shops where workers will be able to log in and video chat and meet our families and hear a bit about them. Workers are still matching, and Family Match is a perfectly aligned tool to the Virginia system right now, and the way the regulation has been set up in light of COVID-19 and the coronavirus spread across the state. And so we've been doing what we can to train workers. I actually have done about 4 trainings just today, and it's noon. So we're definitely helping get some caseloads up online, making sure that we've got the youth represented in our system and that those assessments are completed. And then we're working with regions across the state. So families, if you haven't taken a look at your welcome letter or details recently, please do so. I'm screening those right now to create some cohorts for these coffee shops. A handful of you have sent me notes already to just say, hey, we want to be included. We'd love to do a coffee shop. Please pick us. We're doing everything that we can to leverage this time and get folks in front of workers. And workers on the line, feel free to send me the targets that you're looking for. I've got one for 17-plus-year-old youth placements, and I've got one for the younger teen tween demographic in the works. I've also got one for medically fragile children. So I'm sort of plug and playing in those environments right now to get the right kind of coffee house together. If needed, I can drag my husband down and he can entertain us with some coffee shop music on his guitar. But we're trying to just make a great chill atmosphere where we can all kind of get together and be humans and connect and talk about our wishes and goals for families, and just hopefully make some magic happen here in Virginia. So with that is my biggest thing. I'll put my email address in chat as always. And if you guys have things that come up or things that you want to advocate for, don't hesitate to ping me. Thank you.
Thank you, Whitney. I'm going to turn it over to Christina.
All right.
So our speaker today is Eric. He is a behavioral health nurse, nurse educator, and director of a inner city mission center, martial arts instructor. But most importantly, he's a father and foster and adoptive dad. And I'll just want to intro this part in that he said he wanted to share thoughts initially about kind of this virus and how we were to share that with our children in our home. But then he said honestly it's just a need to know information according to their age. And after answering their questions and trying not to keep the TV and radio continuously on, most importantly to be focusing on how do we lessen the fear in ourselves and in our home. And when we as a people have anxiety lessen and trust build up, then we can handle a crisis a little bit easier than if we're being crippled by fear or anxiety or mistrust. So Eric shared some 4 basic things that he would wish someone would have reminded him of to help lessen anxiety, fear, depression, and he wants to share that today. So, Eric.
Good afternoon. I know this is an unusual time in our history, and we as adults are anxious, stressed, or just downright scared. I can't even begin to imagine what's happening in the minds of our young people. In the behavioral health realm, I have seen fear and anxiety become an all-time high. Even in our home, with 8 children, of which some have traumatic pasts, developmental and behavioral issues, we have seen fear, sadness, anxiety, as well as emotional and behavioral issues increase during this time in our nation. When I was asked to speak quite a while ago, I prepared an outline that was more medical-based than the information I was going to share. I knew I could provide you with information about family therapists, counselors, medications, and even allergy and food sensitivity testing. But I found as a father and behavioral health nurse, what I needed right now was reminders of simple ways I can help at home. Yet at some point, when our nation is running with open doors again, perhaps that would be a conversation for you all to have. I'm sure your state is like ours. Nearly everything is shut down as we are on lockdown. So making an appointment for our kids with a therapist, doctor, or counselor has been quite difficult. Even though there are virtual appointments, many centers have just closed for this time. With that said, I will ask the Adoption Share staff to send you links for online sources if applicable in your state. In lockdown, how can we help ourselves and our children deal with stress, fear, grief, and anxiety? Sometimes the simplest ways can be the most impactful. Wayne Gretzky, the hockey player, once said, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." While he was referring to the hockey game, I have taken this quote to my personal and professional life as well as to my parenting life. When presented with a new way of dealing with something, I used to ignore it if it did not gel with my lifestyle, until I thought about this quote. What if what was presented to me was accurate? I may miss a potential successful moment if I did not consider it. I think this applies to helping our kids during this time as well. In addition to my years as a behavioral health nurse, I have had the privilege of teaching nurses and leading groups of patients in the realm of ways to help with struggles, such as anxiety, stress, sadness, fear, especially when it strikes in great measure. I've also applied things to my family and noticed less anxiety, fear, worry, as well as other behavioral and emotional issues improve. I also confirmed that the 4 areas I'm going to touch upon were approved by our CDC, World Health Organization, and several leading health groups. And in fact, these are areas which are mentioned among them. This is the time mom and dad link arms across the nation and share tidbits that can help while we are sheltering in. This is the time when we sit in our 4 walls, that we go back to the basics. So I want to encourage you with some basic things. I'm going to mix my professional hat with my foster adoptive dad hat and share some things that were not only approved by world health leaders, but have worked for those in my life also in the realm of helping our kids and ourselves with fear, anxiety, sadness, and stress. These suggestions will not cure anything, and to be honest, you may not find them helpful at all, but for many of my patients and for my family, they were a game changer. And I would feel horrible not sharing what worked with our family because maybe it'll help you and your family too. So I'm going to share 4 areas. My wife, Christine, will follow up with practical ways we applied this at home. And our teenage daughter, Abigail, will add a personal touch from an adolescent point of view. So these are 4 things we found most helpful adding to our home. First one is foods. While most every health site mentions food as a way to help decrease levels of anxiety and stress, I know that at this point in our nation, it is hard to always get the food we need or want. So rather than talk about some good foods that have helped, in case you're also finding it hard to shop these days, I will simply talk about some foods that we found helpful to avoid. There were many foods that we removed. Some helped, some did not. But these few helped our foster and adopted children as well as our biological ones. These foods, once removed or reduced, led us to unbelievable improvements in our family. The first was the removal of food dyes. Now, this is not a debate whether food dyes really cause or worsen behavioral issues or not. I'm just sharing what worked for our home and some of my patients. We had a child seriously struggling with behavioral issues at home and uncontrollable emotional issues. It was presented to us to consider removing dyes. And while we were not on one side of the argument or the other, we thought it would not hurt to try it. So for 1 month, we removed dyes and replaced them. And we saw the behavioral and emotional issues improve drastically. Another one is sodium benzoate. We removed this from our menu as well. It is a preservative. And just as I said before, I am not here to argue medically whether this is really affects every person. But for us, we saw that sodium benzoate had some of the same properties as food dyes. Within days of removing from our home any foods that had this preservative, we saw a drastic change again. Another one is gluten. Now, many people have gluten sensitivity. While it is wise to consider food sensitivity testing, we thought it was worth just trying the removal of gluten to see what would happen. Again, the improvement in behavioral and emotional struggles improved greatly. There are many good foods that we added to our diet, and I'm sure they helped our children positively too. But as it is harder to shop these days, and given the fact that we saw the most improvements when we removed some things, even more than adding good ones, we will just leave it with these 3, as they are the ones that helped us see the most improvement.
Years ago, when Eric first shared with me one of the topics he was leading discussions on, food, in the behavioral health unit with his patients, I took note of it. Here was a medical facility understanding and leading the way, therapy and medicine-wise, but this facility thought of the importance of combining some easy steps that individuals could add to their own life. So in the early days, we had children enter our home after major abuse and seriously traumatic events. And they were responding to this through their emotions and behavior. And my heart broke for their extreme pain. As a foster mom, I so badly wanted to help them in addition to their meds and therapists. Now, we weren't sure if the removal of the food Eric mentioned would work, but we thought we'd give it a try. So I remember the night I went through the whole house. I noted all the foods, even the toothpaste and soaps that had chemical dyes or sodium benzoate in it. And then I replaced it with foods that did not. And 12 years ago, it was much more difficult than it is today. And now it seems that the choice for natural options are much more readily available. So if you're wanting to consider this, I'd encourage you to give it a try. Not only did it amazingly show some great improvements, I found it actually was much richer in taste too. But the nice thing is, I'm finding that even though many items are low in stores during this crisis, we here in Georgia anyway have not had trouble finding natural foods. So for example, instead of colored cereal, we replaced it with natural, nature's own, O's. Or instead of M&Ms, we'd order naturally colored ones online, which ship free. Instead of Gatorade or colored juices, we made our own, or we found natural ones. Instead of colored toothpaste or sparkling toothpaste, we just kept with white. Instead of summer push-up pops, we made our own, or we bought the natural ones from Outshine or other companies. When it came to birthday foods, we made cupcakes with no dyes and just stuck them all in the freezer. When we needed it or wanted it, they were available. Took them out and frosted them. We bought natural dyes to be able to decorate cookies and cakes with the kids. And we replaced things like gummy worms and gummy bears with gummy candy by Black Forest. We found for our children this removal worked so well that we bought extra of these things so that when they were given a chemical dye candy, they could trade it in for a natural one. Now, you maybe find it hard to find natural replacements, so just perhaps you want to consider trying just to remove it, just to remove and not replace. There are other snack options that are fun. I'm sure you have tons of ideas of your own, but We've always enjoyed a bowl of popcorn with chocolate chips or homemade trail mix with their favorite cereal and chocolate chips or chips and salsa or things like that. As Eric said, this may not work for your crew, but it might be worth a try. And while it won't cure any behavioral or emotional issues, we found the replacement of these ingredients reduced the level that our children dealt with these issues, allowing for more conversations to be had and thereby relationships to be strengthened and trust to be built. Even our children who experience the most trauma. Eric also mentioned gluten. This was actually one of the easiest things to implement. Now, we were not the ones to jump on the bandwagon right away saying gluten-free is the way to go, and I don't even know if we'll jump on that bandwagon now. But one thing I know for sure is it really did make a difference in most of our kids, and it was the easiest thing, as I said, to remove. We just replaced breads with gluten-free breads and pasta with gluten-free pasta. Kids never knew the difference. We replaced crackers and cookies, flour, pizza with gluten-free. And although they didn't know the difference, they enjoyed it, and it helped some of our kids so much. We found it lowered stress level in all of us at home and allowing for us to talk about things and not so much of the struggles that we were seeing. And even for me, it allowed for clearer thinking, which, to be honest, is really what I need these days when my head is spinning as a mom.
My name is Abigail. I am 16 years old, and I struggled with drastic emotions and severe behavioral problems in my early years. I suppose as a teenager, I still struggled to a degree as any other adolescent, but it was once so unhealthy, I couldn't clearly think. I was taken for multiple medical tests. While altering the food my family and I ate didn't magically cure everything, it helped in numerous areas. Surprisingly, I didn't lose my temper as easily as before. And even when I was a young child, I could actually communicate what was going on. I find that with the food change we put into practice, my thinking became clearer and more logical. And since I have ADD tendencies, this was so vital for me. At times, before the food changes, I remember feeling a heavy feeling in my stomach and my mind seemed fogged in every area. With the food alter, it was like a heavy weight and a cloud had vanished from my body. Please understand that food is a comfort for kids, especially during this time when things around us aren't very comforting. There wasn't one food that my parents couldn't find a natural replacement for, though. Fortunately, my siblings and I never lost our comfort food, and yet we were still able to handle the stress around us more logically and more focused.
Another way to help lessen anxiety and other emotional struggles, as recognized by the World Health Organization and Harvard Medical School, is exercise. Yes, I had the joy of seeing exercise help lessen anxiety, fear, stress, and depression on the behavioral health units and in my martial arts classes I work on. But I also saw it help our children at home. Harvard Health says, one sobering study shows that people with anxiety tend to be more sedentary and do less forms of physical activity, which is ironic because lacing up your sneakers and getting out and moving may be the single non-medical solution we have for preventing and treating anxiety. End quote. As a behavioral health nurse, caring for patients who have experienced trauma and or struggle with behavioral health issues, I have not only read the effects of exercise has on the brain, such as how getting your heart rate up changes brain chemistry, increasing anti-anxiety non-chemicals, but I have witnessed how physical activity has positively affected my students, my patients, and my family.
So exercise is another way of helping ourselves and our children lessen anxiety and depression, thereby increasing positive thoughts and trust. Exercise is also a way of making fun memories in the house. I've seen walls come down in various children and trust levels build through laughing and running and making memories. We had one child who came to us. He witnessed one of the most horrific crimes ever committed to his mother. The trauma was so great. The pain was so real. And yes, he had meds and he had counselors and therapists, but I wanted to do something else for him, a way we could help him at home too. Exercise became an escape and a place where he found himself and he could open up about his past and his fear. However, not every child in our home likes to exercise, so we had to be creative in all these creative ways in which our kids were not even realizing that they were exercising. These are just a couple of the ways we do it even now in lockdown. Bike riding. We load up the van and head to a park for a bike ride. Sometimes I'll tell them a story that brings their favorite superheroes in it, and they have to pretend to be on a mission and rewarded with a picnic lunch. Or hiking. If biking doesn't work, a hike might. Again, I'll create an imaginary mission, like we're all on a hunt for some missing jewel, and at the end of the hike, I drop the jewels in a place easy to find and celebrate with a snack. And with teenagers in the house, we've actually asked them to help create the mission, and they have loved it. Neighborhood walk. We call it a color walk. Perhaps everybody in the family could take pictures of the color they're on the hunt for. Helps them focus on that. Giving maybe verbal awards later on for the most photos taken or the one with the most creative photo of that color. Neighborhood or backyard scavenger hunts are great. You can find simple scavenger hunts on the internet. We actually did one at Easter time. Our teens love it too. Choose a specific color egg and hide it according to their age, especially if you hide their favorite goodies or money. And inside, we might play hide and seek all over the house just to get everyone up off the couch, moving and laughing. Outside, maybe a simple obstacle course. And then online, there are virtual online martial arts or interactive fitness ones or dance classes. And we've had dance offs in the living room with the kids playing their favorite music. Just setting aside time each day, especially for kids who are more sedentary, to move their bodies has been impactful. We've seen strength come out, interests in specific areas like a ballerina in our home now, fears be conquered, teamwork rise, fear, depression, anxiety lessen, trust build. Truly only positive things have come from adding some form of exercise.
Okay, as a younger teen, there were many times the thought of sitting on the couch was much sweeter sounding than getting up and moving. But my parents tended to encourage movement in ways that didn't really seem like exercise. And every time I sighed about getting up, because that seemed like the teen thing to do, I was secretly smiling because I knew I was in for a time of movement, but also laughter and smiles, and I always felt closer to my family after doing a fun activity. The two most recent ones was a human version of Hungry Hippos, using tons of Easter eggs, and another was a family dance-off, and even our family color walk. All of them, I sweat, moved, laughed, and if I was depressed or anxious, I always felt better afterwards. Because of my parents' encouragement when I was a preteen, I now set my mornings on the swings, later perhaps on the treadmill, and I'm always up for a dance-off or trampoline fun with my younger siblings. It's funny how I came from slumping on the couch, feeling sore and depressed, to daily exercising and smiling most of the day long. Exercise has clearly changed my mood swings and my body.
Another way that we can help within the four walls of our home, simple ways that may prove helpful, is in the way of meditation. Johns Hopkins University noted from 47 studies that meditation can indeed help ease psychological stresses like anxiety, fear, and depression. Scientifically, we have learned how it lowers blood pressure and can help to ease emotional and behavioral struggles. Personally, I've witnessed how not just adults, but how children and teens have benefited from a form of meditation. I've witnessed improvements on behavioral health units with very traumatic patients, from students in my martial arts classes and even within my own home.
Initially, the word meditation can bring about thoughts of Eastern meditation or Middle Eastern religious groups, but the dictionary simply describes meditation as thinking, reflecting, relaxing, considering. Although we're a Christian family and we appreciate meditation from that standpoint, we have learned that all people, religious or not, can benefit from meditation. We had a child who struggled so greatly with depression that we were a bit worried. Oh, all right, to be honest, we were very, very worried. Yes, we saw a doctor too, but we also found that forms of meditation, in addition to medical ways, allowed this child to connect with herself, her thoughts, her dreams. And in the quiet moments, she began to formulate words and open up, and depression began to dissolve. These are some simple ways we have utilized the idea of meditation and noted great improvement in our home. Even just setting aside a few minutes each day can be helpful. We might put on classical music and get a coloring book for every member of the family, even adults and teens, like a fresh coloring book and a new pack of colored pencils. Some might draw or color while we listen. Other times we have played the background outdoor sounds type effect while maybe playing with Play-Doh and I'll tell you, us adults like Play-Doh too, or coloring or eating popcorn and drawing, just the quietness. And many nights a week, I read to the family as they all grab comfy pillows and assume the position. I may read an adventure story that comes with good morals, and can stimulate conversation at another time, or we may read a very visual poem or a short story, which can cause the mind to think vividly and descriptively about a happy scene. Sometimes we'll all sit outside, maybe in absolute silence for 90 seconds, and see if they can focus on the different sounds all around them, teaching them to focus. And then we might talk about those sounds. I mean, Eric's next and last point can almost tie in with this one, but I really wanted to keep these examples separate.
I didn't know the word meditate until I got older. Yet I never realized we were doing forms of meditation long before I knew that word. Without realizing it, we were experiencing meditation almost daily as we listened to Mom read or color and listen to music. My three favorite things are, number one, when we all find a spot in the living room, all screens and phones are off, lights dim, and Mom reads stuff. Right now she's reading The Voyage of the Dawn Treader by C.S. Lewis. My father, my 14-year-old sister, and myself enjoy this as much as the little ones, and taken from my stresses and worries into a magical land. It's like a safe world where my family and I go together. I love sitting quietly listening to music while I crochet and my sisters draw or color. There's a peace that seems to fill the room and help drive away fear. Number three is one of my favorites, is the time my mom would have us lie on the floor in the living room as she describes the scene for us, leaving room for our mind to fill in. For example, she may say, you walk along the path and see an old tree. Notice the vibrant colors from its flowers. And we fill in the blanks with the size of the tree, perhaps maybe the flower or the color, with what our mind actually pictures. She describes a lot of Bible scenes for us, but you could totally use any nature scene. After these activities, I always feel less stressed, and I always feel more connected to my family, as if we, just us together, travel to this secret place.
Words. The fourth and last area I have found to be the most helpful in reducing stress and fear is found in 5 letters, WORDS. As a behavioral health nurse, educator, martial arts instructor, and adoptive foster parent, I have seen that as communication grows, trust can grow and anxiety and depression can decrease. For many of us parents and for the kids in our homes, building a strong, trusting family can be quite difficult, especially with many of our kids who have experienced things like severe trauma, broken relationships, depression, and mistrust. Yet if we give up trying, we in essence give up the very core of what the family was meant to be, safe and nurturing. This can at times seem like an unattainable goal, but as we, as family members, work together to encourage, affirm, and support one another, we may very well find the trust level and communication improve. My father left our family and I was one of 6 siblings. My wife's mom died when she was in elementary school. 5 of our children have been removed from their biological families. Huge trauma, not to mention many other occurrences which happened that I won't bring up here, but trauma, relationships broken, trust destroyed. Can it be rebuilt? Well, yes. I have witnessed trust return in the patients I've worked with and in my own personal family. But it does require work. Yet it is found in many baby steps and small forms of communication. That little by little take the trust level up. At first, it may not seem like much progress is being made, but as we turn to look where we once were, we can see how far we have come. We see scientifically through the World Health Organization, University of Delaware, among others, that as communication in family improves, trust grows, and fear and depression can lessen. Here are some bite-sized, simple ways to begin at home.
Due to our own trauma, we made communication of utmost importance in our home, and we have seen trust build and their young hearts are more able to open up and share. And as this happens, fear can be addressed. We had one child that came into our home that struggled with self-harm. For this child, when the doors of communication opened up on both sides, the self-harm literally ended. And later, this child said that being able to safely share the things going on in their mind and heart, they no longer felt locked up and in need of hurting themselves. Words, communication. For some of our children, we saw huge improvements, and the level of anxiety quickly lessened. Others, to be honest, we didn't see huge improvements for many years, but we never gave up. These are just a few ongoing things we do as a family on a regular basis to encourage communication and trust. As I said earlier, we read stories as a family. at least weekly, adventure stories, mostly having good morals and lessons. So we might take the time to talk with a child on the back deck and bring up questions about the character in the book, and it allows me as mom and dad to see just a window into their heart based upon their responses to those questions. Every so often, I try to take a child out for the day, just several hours, just me and them. Obviously, during lockdown, this is difficult, but it costs me only my time, and we always return with a relationship having grown. And I'm embarrassed to admit this one because we have not done it in months, but it is so precious. Once a month, on the night the child was born, we allow them to stay up extra late, and the other kids go to bed extra early. So if you're born on the 15th, you can stay up later on the 15th. The other children never mind going to bed earlier because they know their night is coming. And we might make a bowl of popcorn and maybe play a board game like Life, just me, my husband, and that one child. With 8 children right now in the house, we have found this night to be an amazing night of communication and trust building. We found one child, although needing to communicate but just unable to verbally find her words, she uses a notebook that only she and I share. If she needs to communicate something to me, she writes it in the notebook and leaves it on my pillow. Also, we keep a mason jar in the center of the table with slips of paper in a basket nearby, and everyone is free to write anything good to put in the jar, any good moments, happy things that happened. And our jar is nearly full, and it's only April. What we found most interesting is the children in our home who have experienced the most trauma end up writing on the most slips. The last 2 ideas that take place around the dinner table. One is we may choose every now and then a member of the family, and we'll go around, and everyone has a turn to share something they like about that person. And even the toughest of the kids has a smile that begins to creep across their face. And the last idea is we'll go around the dinner table, and we do this almost nightly. We share we call it a high for the day and a low, and a hum moment. The hum moment is just something that they learned or remembered. And this has become an incredible way to build trust and to speak truth into one another.
Communication. Sometimes as a teenager, I hadn't really desire to tell my parents of what I'm feeling for fear of their disappointment. But secretly, I want to be heard and understood. I find that my family implements ways of communication. Not only do I see my siblings open up, but I too find myself opening up even more than before. Instead of feeling more vulnerable after I share, I feel safer. People know me, my flaws, my feelings, my issues, my guilt, and yet don't judge me, but love instead. 3 things that have helped me the most to build an even higher level of trust with my family has been when I have alone time with my mom. I love that. And alone night with mom and dad. And others when we go around the dinner table and share positive truth about one another. And I love the mason jar. One time, when we went through a difficult time as a family, we dumped out the mason jars of the past 5 years. And I was reminded of our many blessings, funny moments, and how much my family really loves each other. Each slip of paper was a jewel and a gem. When we do these ways of communication, I see not only trust build in our family, but we kids feel of great worth. And I've noticed depression in myself and my siblings lessen, and anxiety and fear seem to just dissolve and melt away.
So thank you for allowing me, Christina, and Abigail the opportunity to share with you today. Let me add one more time. I'm not saying that any of this is a cure. You may not see the difference like my patients did or like we did in our home. Even if you try all of this and none of this works for you, don't listen to lies that you have failed, because some things work for some people and some things work for others. But as a behavioral health nurse and from one foster adopted parent to another, I just want to share what worked for us. Hopefully you were able to gain some ideas in the realm of food or exercise or meditation or words, communication. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. We want to open it up to any questions. If anybody has any questions for them, you can take the time to ask now. Any questions? I'll ask. for our families with a new placement, how would you advise putting some of these into someone who just came into the home and everything is kind of sensory overload and overwhelming, having just, moved in?
So Eric and I are both looking at each other. I'll take that one first, and then so that one child I spoke about who saw that horrific scene with his mom, when he came in, he was absolutely closed up. So what I tried to do was find where his interests would lie. He wasn't one to really enjoy the quiet meditation. That wasn't him. And I don't know that ever would have really worked for him. But he was very, very active. So we found some exercise, but not solo. We would do it as a family. So I guess I would say to someone who just came in is see if you can peek through in some way and find where their interest lies and incorporate that thing as a family, whatever that thing is. Because as he or she sees that people are surrounding that activity they're interested in, it just builds that trust level. So whatever that may be, if it's cooking, that wasn't even mentioned here, but cooking together as a family is a great time. So I don't know if that answered, but that's what I would do. Any input there?
Well, I want to throw out there that everything that we talked about, we implemented. We all did it together as a family. Whether it's the eating all the same foods or everyone exercise doing the same thing, we all did it together as a family. There was no one singled out, especially with the food part. If that person had to eat a certain way, then we all did. So that's just something like that. There's more unity, So.
Mm-hmm. Hey guys, this is Thea. Thank you so much, Abigail, especially for your willingness to share with us. That's very brave, and you're very articulate. So thank you for that. You need to come teach my 11-year-old how to grow up to be a great 16-year-old like yourself. I'm wondering kind of if you guys are familiar with the love languages. I think it was the author was like Gary Chapman, maybe. It was a long time ago, but in kind of cluing into, like Abigail said that she really enjoyed having those like one-on-one times, and that's kind of like the love language of time and investment of time. I'm wondering if you guys have any thoughts around kind of how you best identify what how your kids each sort of receive love. Maybe for another child, like one-on-one time or alone time isn't, I mean, they might appreciate it, but maybe it's really through acts of service or through gifts or through words of affirmation. How do you determine finding out which way your child best can receive the way that you're showing him or her love, and do you guys have any tips on that or words of wisdom?
So I'll share something and see if Abigail follows up. But I do know that book, and if you listening have never gotten that book, I do highly recommend it because it helps you to focus on how we are all drastically different in how we respond. But sometimes it's as simple. I think it is Gary Chapman used to have a resource sheet of like a questionnaire game at dinner time, and they are unaware of what you're doing. But as you're going through this just fun questionnaire, and based upon the responses, it gives you an idea of, especially if it's a child just placed in your home, it gives you an idea of where their love language is, and you can begin there. It's the best place to start is something that they're already drawn to. And then from there build. We do have drastic ones. We have some that would cuddle me, and these are even, non-biological ones that would cuddle me for hours if I let them. And that is their love language. And there are others who, they just give you a kiss on the cheek, but man, they want to talk for forever. One, which is Abigail right beside me, and she just wants to share her dreams. We have others that don't talk at all. I've got one son, he doesn't. But if you could sit with a pencil and a drawing and just start drawing with him, within a few minutes, he'll verbally open up to you. So I think the first thing is to find their love language, and it begins with maybe a simple game or questionnaire that they're unaware of, and take it from there. Does that help?
Yeah, no, thank you.
Anyone else before we wrap up today? I want to make sure to give everybody a chance. I really want to thank Christina and Eric and Abigail for sharing your heart and your expertise Again, if you are wanting a training credit for this call, please email me at Libby, LBBY, at adoption-share.com, and the code word is flowers. Thank you so much, and hopefully everybody stay safe out there. Thank you.
Thank you.